This is the solution to the study guide exercises in Lesson 4 for the Visual Basic for Absolute Beginner video series. I'm looking at page number 6 where the exercise tells us to use what we learned in lesson number 4. Try recreating the exercise from lesson 2, the DVD, the video rental application that we built then. And this time, add an OK button. That'll take all the values out of the form fields and assign them to variables in the OK button's click event. Make sure you choose the correct type of data, the data type, for each type of data that you're capturing. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I'm not going to recreate the whole example. I'm just going to load up the DVD projects that we created in lesson 2. Take a look at it here. And what we want to do is simply in the OK click a button handler, event handler, we want to just take all the values that were typed in by the user into the various form fields and store them in variables. Very simple task. Couple of tricks to getting things out of the list box, the combo box, the radio buttons, and so we'll talk about those as we get to that point. So let's go ahead and do this. Double click the OK button. That'll bring us into our code view. I'll show you a little trick here. I'm not sure if I went through this before or not, but I'm going to create a new horizontal tab group. That will give us essentially two sets of tabs, an upper set and a lower set. In the upper set we have the code view, and the lower set we have our form designer open up. And the purpose for this is to help us remind us of the names of some of these controls, and we'll need that as we work through this example, so we don't have to keep shifting back between tabs. We can have them both open at the same time, just in their own little subsection of the entire main area. Okay, so as I'm taking a look at this example in this exercise, most of the values that we're going to be pulling out are string values, so this wasn't as exciting as I thought it might be. Even some of the numerical values that we would typically type into, like postal code or credit card number, these will be translated into string values. Generally, you don't need to do any kind of arithmetic operation on card number or postal code. That's one of the criteria that I would use in determining which type of data to store the value into. Now, the expiration date will translate into a real month and a year, and we might want to do a comparison on that to see if today is greater or less than the expiration date on the user's credit card, and throw some sort of an error or exception message based on that. So in that particular case, I may want to make those real numeric values and then do a conversion into date. That might take me a pass or two to get the right format for that, so be patient when we get to that point. But at any rate, let's take a look at kinds of information we're going to have to be pulling off here. We'll do a section of declarations and then assignments. We'll do these in two different steps instead of just doing it all in one, which is definitely possible. So let's do this. Dim, we'll keep it easy, right? Selected videos, a string. And this might be even better used at some point in the future as an array or a list of objects, a collection of objects. Since we're just getting started here, we're going to keep it simple, only allow one video per rental. Again, this isn't something we're going to sell to a major chain anytime soon, but it'll get us started at least. So we'll save one video selected into a single string value. We'll talk about arrays later on, but that would allow us to select multiples and save them each in their own little container within our variable. Okay, let's continue on. Dim customer name string, dim address string, dim city string, dim state string, dim postal code string, dim payment type string. Payment type might be something in the future that we use something called an enumeration for. It would allow us to kind of make only a certain number of values that could possibly be selected, since we only have 4 types of payment. That might be better, but again, that's a little more of an advanced concept, so we're just going to keep it as strings right now. Let's continue on. Dim card type string. Again, that might be better as an enumeration. We're going to leave it as a string for now. Dim card number, a string. We already talked about that a moment ago. Dim expiration as date. Okay. So we'll have to do a little bit of conversion to grab it out of these two individual text boxes, or combo boxes rather, and then convert it into a date. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then dim checked customer ID. We'll make this into a Boolean, a yes, no, for true or false. Okay. Most of these are going to be really easy. For example, to get the customer name value, we're just going to put name text box.text, right? So pretty much everything for this column is going to be similar to that. Address equals address, text box.text, city equals city, state. Now state will be a little bit different. And we'll use the selected text property to retrieve the value that was selected from the state. Okay? So that's just a little bit different. They don't have a text property, they have a selected text property. There's also something called the selected value. In a more advanced implementation, we might have TX, which stands for Texas here in the United States, but we may want to, behind the scenes, have the value Texas completely spelled out, or vice versa. So we can have the value that's represented to the user and kind of the behind the scenes value that is used programmatically, and we can have two different values for the same entry within our list box or our combo boxes. We won't take the time to do that now, but it's definitely something that you'll come across if you tend to use a lot of these types of controls. And when we get into data binding, I think we're going to even show an example of that, of how to use the selected text value versus the selected value. Okay, let's leave it there for now, and we'll continue on to postal code. There we go. Okay, so payment type is the first one that we've come to that we're going to have to do something a little bit different. The trick with payment type is that we've got 4 radio buttons, and so we're going to need to check each of them kind of in an if statement to determine which one is turned on, and if that's the one that's turned on, then we're going to assign the payment type string to some hard-coded string value, or even possibly just the label. Let's see how it's used here. It's just the text value. Okay, so here's what we'll do. Okay, so that's part of the structure that we'll use for that. Let's continue on. Use selected text for our combo box for card type. Alright, so here we get to expiration. I'm going to do something a little bit tricky here. There's a built-in Visual Basic function called cdate, which converts a string into a real date object. So let's try that to start off with here. So we're gonna look. This might look a little funky at first. Just bear with me. So, just to kind of explain what happened here, we're going to grab the month value, and since we're in the United States, we have a different date format than most of the rest of the world, where we have month, then day, then year. I think probably what most of the rest of the world does is either day, month, year, or year, month, day. Depends on what your settings are, your localization settings for Windows XP. So you do change this up appropriately, but essentially just added the first day of the month for the expiration date, and then the year, concatenated all those together with the string concatenation character, the ampersand. So it should say like 07 and /1/ and 2006. Then takes that string that we've created and calls the C date. So it'll convert the data type from just a string into a date and then set that into our expiration variable that's expecting a date value. Okay, so that should work. The next thing we want to do then is grab off the value of our checked customer ID. So equals, it's expecting a true or false, so we got to give it something that it would be able to use, and fortunately for us, as you can see, the checked property is a Boolean as well, so it'll fit in there very nicely. And let's see what else we're missing. Oh yeah, I think we're missing the big one here at the top. So let's do that. Video list box. Whoops. What do we call that variable again? Selected videos. Okay. And what do we call this? We called it videos list box. Okay, again, because of our simple implementation, I think all we'll need is just the text value. However, if we were going to allow them to select multiple videos from that list, we would need to use selected items, and so we would take a slightly different approach, because it would return a collection of objects, and you don't know what a collection of objects is just yet. So let's not really worry about that. Let's just continue on with text. Just wanted to kind of explain that. Whoops. And let's take this and put it up here. Now what we'll do is to check our work, just run our application, and let's just enter some values in here. Bob 123 East Main Street, and we'll choose credit card, Visa. I just made that up, sorry if that's really a number. To 2007, and I click the OK button. Now we don't see anything, but because it didn't die, I'm going to assume that